The charge was simple on paper, devastating in implication: negligent homicide. According to the state of Maryland vs. Pangolongan and King, the couple had failed to provide adequate supervision and medical attention to their daughter after a violent domestic argument 2 months earlier. Alina had collapsed at home one night and never woke again. But the state's narrative was only half of the story. Rita's attorney, a soft-spoken man named Alan Cortez, leaned close and whispered, "They'll start with the coroner's testimony. Don't react, no matter what they say. The jury reads faces before they hear words." Rita nodded, though her throat felt sewn shut. Across the aisle, the prosecutor, Dana Keats, stood with a quiet confidence that could chill blood. "Your Honor," she began, "the state intends to prove that the defendants, acting with reckless disregard for their child's well-being, directly contributed to the circumstances leading to her death." A low murmur rippled through the spectators. Larry, jaw tight, looked straight ahead. His hands clenched until his knuckles whitened. Rita wanted to speak, to say that they had loved Alina more than life itself, that the night she died was an accident, a storm of fear and helplessness, but words no longer belonged to her. 2 months before the trial, their home had been a different world. Alina was a bright girl, 13, but already brimming with a kind of restless curiosity that sometimes frightened her mother. She asked too many questions, wrote long letters she never sent, and painted birds with human eyes. Larry worked nights as a paramedic, Rita was a music teacher. Their marriage had worn thin under the strain of schedules, debts, and secrets they no longer confessed. That night, the argument started over something trivial, Rita forgetting to sign a school form. It escalated, as small things do when resentment festers. Alina had stood at the top of the stairs, trembling. "Stop yelling," she'd cried. "Please, stop." But the shouting didn't stop. No one remembered the exact moment she fell. There was a thud, a silence, and then the sound that would haunt them forever, a single, strangled cry. By the time Larry reached her, Alina was unconscious. Rita called 911 with shaking hands, but when the ambulance arrived, Larry was the one performing CPR, shouting her name over and over as if sheer force could bring her back. The hospital's fluorescent light swallowed everything afterward. The doctors said severe cranial trauma. The police asked questions no parent should ever have to answer. And then, when the autopsy came, the state decided it wasn't just an accident. Rita stared at the jurors, 12 strangers, none of whom had known Alina, none of whom had stood in that house the night it happened. Dana Keats began calling witnesses. The first was the coroner. He spoke clinically about patterns of bruising, inconsistencies in the timeline, possible delayed medical care. Every word was a blade. When he described the injury as non-accidental, Rita flinched. Larry's hand brushed hers beneath the table, a small, desperate tether to reality. Alan Cortez rose for cross-examination. His voice was gentle, steady. "Doctor, can you say with absolute certainty that the injury could not have been caused by a fall?" The coroner hesitated. "In medicine, absolute certainty is rare. But in my opinion—" "Your opinion," Alan said softly, "is not a fact. Correct?" The jury's eyes flickered. A seed of doubt, small but real, had been planted. Outside, the trial was theater. Reporters camped at the courthouse steps. Talk shows debated the monster mother and cold-hearted father. A popular journalist even published an expose about toxic domestic patterns in middle-class America, using photos stolen from Rita's social media. She stopped reading the news after the first week. The words had become knives. At night, in her small apartment where she lived under house arrest, Rita would dream of Alina's voice, soft, echoing, asking, "Why didn't you stop it, Mom?" Larry wasn't allowed to contact her directly per bail conditions, but once, she received a letter without a return address. "They think we're monsters, Rita. Maybe we are. But I'd give anything to trade my freedom for one more morning with her. Don't let them make you forget she was loved." She cried for hours after reading that. On the second day, Dana called Alina's best friend, a small girl with trembling hands. She spoke about how Alina had confided fears about her parents' arguments, about wanting to run away and live by the ocean. Rita could barely breathe. When the girl's mother escorted her out, The courtroom fell silent except for the sound of Rita's quiet sobs. Judge Holloway tapped her gavel once. "Mrs. Pangolongan, control yourself. But how does one control the sound of a heart breaking?" The rain began the next morning, just as the prosecution called their second round of witnesses. The courtroom lights flickered faintly, and the gray drizzle outside blurred the windows like the world itself was weeping for what it would hear. Rita sat stiffly, her black dress still damp from the short walk across the parking lot. Larry avoided looking at her. Ever since the case began, even their glances were monitored, interpreted, dissected, twisted into signs of guilt by 1,000 hungry eyes. When the bailiff announced, "The state calls Officer Michael Daniels," a collective breath filled the room. Officer Daniels was the first responder the night Alina died. He stepped up to the stand, uniform pressed, expression grave. He swore the oath and adjusted the microphone. "Tell the court what you saw that night, officer," Prosecutor Dana Keats said, her voice measured but sharp. "I was dispatched to 47 Maple Drive at approximately 9:41 p.m., he began. The call came in as a domestic disturbance with a medical emergency. When I entered the residence, I found Mr. King administering CPR to a minor female, later identified as Alina Pangolongan. Mrs. Pangolongan was on the phone with emergency services. And the scene?" Dana asked. Daniels hesitated. "Chaotic. A broken vase on the floor. A lamp knocked over. The child was unresponsive." He looked toward Rita then, as though seeing her again for the first time. "She kept saying, 'She just fell, she just fell.' Over and over. But Mr. King. He didn't say anything. He was crying, but he never explained what happened." "Did anything seem inconsistent?" Dana pressed. "Maybe," he admitted. "I remember thinking the staircase looked fine. No signs of damage or loose rails. The girl had bruises that didn't match a simple fall." The jury scribbled notes. Rita could feel their pins cutting into her skin. Alan Cortez rose slowly for cross-examination. "Officer Daniels, you've worked hundreds of domestic calls. You'd agree that stress can make people appear suspicious?" "Yes, of course. And when you arrived, you saw a father trying to save his child, not harm her." Daniels nodded reluctantly. "Yes. No weapon, no signs of intentional injury?" "No, sir." Alan gave a small smile. "Then your conclusion that the bruises didn't match is not medical, but personal. You're not a coroner, correct?" The officer hesitated, caught. "No. Thank you, officer, no further questions." Rita exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. That evening, Alan visited Rita in the detention apartment. She was technically out on bail, but under strict supervision, ankle monitor, no travel, no unsupervised contact with Larry. Alan set a folder on the table. "You need to see this." Inside was a transcript of police interviews, names, timestamps, statements. One caught her attention: Angela Moreno. "She was Alina's art teacher," Rita said softly. "Why is she?" "She told police that Alina once said she was afraid of someone outside the family." Rita's eyes lifted. "What do you mean?" Alan leaned forward. "The girl mentioned a friend of her father's who came to the house sometimes. Someone named Mark." Rita froze. The name struck a chord, one she wished she'd never heard. "Larry had a coworker, Mark Leland," she whispered. "He used to visit, yes. They worked together on the ambulance shift." Did he ever act inappropriately around Alina?" Her lips trembled. I don't know. I never thought so." Alan closed the folder. "We'll look into it. But it might open a different direction for the case. If there's even a hint that someone else was involved, someone who could have hurt her, it changes everything." On the third day, Larry took the stand. He looked exhausted, his face gaunt, eyes hollow. When he raised his right hand to swear the oath, his voice cracked. Dana Keats circled him like a hawk. "Mr. King, tell the jury what happened that night." Larry swallowed. "We argued. I was late again, and Rita accused me of neglecting them. I yelled. She yelled. Alina heard us. She tried to come downstairs, but," his breath hitched. "She fell. Are you sure that's what happened? Dana asked quietly. Because the coroner says otherwise. I don't care what he says. I saw it. Her tone sharpened. Then why didn't you call 911 immediately? Records show a 10-minute delay before your wife's call. I was trying to save her, he shouted. I thought she was still breathing. The courtroom fell silent. Dana stepped closer. Or were you afraid of what people would think? That someone might believe you hit her? Larry's composure shattered. I never touched her. Never. Alan rose quickly. Objection, argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. Ms. Keats, control your questioning. But the damage was done. Larry's words hung in the air like smoke, visible, heavy, impossible to clear. That night, Rita couldn't sleep. Alan's words about Mark Leland echoed in her head. There had been something about the way Mark looked at their daughter, a too friendly smile, a touch that lingered a second too long. She remembered Larry laughing it off when she mentioned it. He's like an uncle to her, he'd said, but was he? She pulled open her drawer and found an old phone, the one Alina used before she died. It had been returned after the investigation, locked with a passcode. Rita had never tried to unlock it. Now, with trembling hands, she entered Alina's birthday. The screen lit up. There were dozens of messages, from friends, from school, but one thread stood out, M. Leland. Her breath caught. The messages were innocent at first. Compliments on her artwork. Encouragement. But then, late night texts, phrases like you can trust me and don't tell your parents. Her stomach turned. The last message was sent 2 days before Lena's death. I'll come by Friday night. Don't be scared. We'll talk like we used to. Friday. The night Alina died. The next morning, Rita handed the phone to Alan. His expression hardened as he read. This, he said, changes everything. But will they believe it? She asked. He looked at her. They will, if we can prove that man was there that night. Alan filed a motion immediately to introduce new evidence. The prosecution objected, arguing it was irrelevant to the parents' negligence. But the judge allowed it, conditionally. If they could find Mark Leland and link him to the scene, the entire case could collapse. But when detectives went to question him, Mark Leland was gone. His apartment was empty. His work locker cleared out. He'd vanished 2 weeks after Alina's funeral. The silence that followed was deafening. Larry, upon hearing the news, buried his face in his hands. Oh God, he muttered. I thought he cared about her. I never imagined. Rita stared out the window, where rain streaked down the glass like tears on marble. Maybe we were both blind, she whispered. Maybe our guilt isn't for what we did, but for what we didn't see. Alan placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll find him. And when we do, we'll find the truth. Outside, thunder rolled, a sound like a distant verdict approached.